I'm Dr. Brian Henning. I'm professor of philosophy and environmental studies here at Gonzaga, and I also have the pleasure of serving as the director for the Center for Climate, Society, and the Environment, and I'm so happy that you're all here today. It's wonderful to see Gonzaga students from so many different disciplines here, and of course, we're excited for you to discuss climate change with our honored guest. Are you excited? All right, so as we begin, we acknowledge that Gonzaga University resides on the homelands of the Spokane tribal people, the people of the river. Indeed, it's only because of the local tribes that invited our Jesuit founders to this region that Gonzaga University was formed. Our event this afternoon is hosted by the Gonzaga Center for Climate, Society, and the Environment. Informed by an abiding commitment to a just society and care for the planet, the Gonzaga Climate Center was created in 2021, not even a year ago, just in April of last year, to serve our campus and the greater Inland Northwest region by promoting innovative interdisciplinary scholarship, teaching, consulting, and capacity building. To explain a little bit of the work that we're doing, and because we have a little bit of extra time, we're going to show a short video that explains a little bit about the purpose of the Climate Center's work.
The truth is that we're in a really critical moment in our planet's history. All of the hottest years on record have all occurred since 2005. Last year, 2020, was yet again the warmest year on record, and we become numb to it after a while.
We're seeing sea level rises, and that leads to more and more climate refugees, people who are displaced because of that and basically have to migrate somewhere else. And that'll obviously have many different consequences, socially, economically, politically.
If we keep at our current emissions trajectory, we're likely to have 3 to 4 degrees warming Celsius this century. To put that in perspective, the scientists of the world think that we can withstand up to 2 degrees.
What's the truth about climate change? I think it's bad. It's not too late to curb a runaway global warming scenario. It's not. But it is dire, and we have to act now.
The Gonzaga Center for Climate, Society, and the Environment is dedicated to bringing our academic mission to bear on the challenge of global climate change, bringing resources and capacity building to the Inland Northwest, both on campus and in our region.
All of the dialogue and the debate over the years helped clarify, the ways in which a center such as this is central to a student in a Jesuit environment, to their education, to their program of study. It really does, I think, set up a caring attitude, but also knowledge that is scientific and culturally specific. So I think in those ways it can really make a huge impact.
Gonzaga has a really strong, clear mission identity. The heart of that, as an institution of higher education, of course, is helping to educate students to live and lead in the world that we find ourselves. It matters what we're doing in our classrooms. What are we doing with our students? What are they learning? And then who are those students becoming? What are they doing in their communities as they graduate? And so it's just critically urgent that we use that academic mission to be of service to addressing the challenge of climate change.
We want to have students and teachers get the best knowledge that they can, and climate change is a multifaceted program, right? There's aspects of it that require science to understand, and then there's aspects of it that require our ethics and our personal philosophies and value systems to also tackle that issue. Through my work with Dr. Brian Henning and now the Climate Center, we have a collection of lessons plans now that tie in a lot to especially local climate issues here in the Inland Pacific Northwest.
When you're a kid, you get taught that there's not really anything you can do, that other people make your decisions for you, that what are you, one kid, gonna do and against this huge crisis that seems so scary and so daunting? So sometimes it's easier just to not think about it at all. But I never think that it's lack of passion in young people. I think that it's lack of knowledge. I think that in order to have that passion, it has to be run by some sort of emotion. And so it takes things like the Gonzaga Center to teach teachers how to teach their students about this. Because I think that as soon as you know the effects and you know what our future is going to look like without this change, then you can't not have that passion.
One of the ways that we are supporting teachers and students in instruction is by being really intentional with providing professional development to all of our instructors, but really targeting science teachers to begin with. And that's been part of our partnership with Gonzaga. Gonzaga and the ESD have reached out and really provided robust opportunities for our teachers to continue to grow their own understanding, as well as to develop lessons and opportunities that filter down to our students. And that's something we're really proud of.
I'm really excited for the center to just become kind of a leader within Spokane on this issue and give all these great opportunities to students to learn more, to organize together within Spokane.
Why is now the right time for the new Gonzaga Center for Climate, Society, and the Environment? Because the problem is so urgent. We have a responsibility to respond as an institution using our expertise as faculty members and as teachers and scholars and the passion of our students to help the community, help Spokane, help the Inland Northwest to begin to respond, to understand the problem and figure out how do we go about surviving and thriving in this century.
That was my daughter. If you're wondering, the names, yeah. She's a junior at North Central High School now and continues to be interested in climate action. In fact, after this, she went on with Rosie Zhou, who is featured here, to create a Student Advisory Council on Climate Change with Spokane Public Schools to persuade the school district to incorporate climate literacy into more of its curricula. One of the projects that is listed in this video is our climate literacy project that's grown over the last year and a half. And it has two aspects that I'd like to briefly mention. First, we provide professional development workshops for K-12 school teachers throughout Eastern Washington. Last year, we provided workshops that reached more than 100 secondary school teachers from 11 different school districts in northeastern Washington state. Collectively, those teachers annually have the ability to impact more than 4,000 middle and high school students annually, who will now hopefully be exposed to climate concepts in their own educational experience. How many of you learned explicitly, I've got a lot of environmental studies majors that probably here, but that might tip the scales, but I'm curious, how many of you studied climate change quite a bit in high school and middle school? Oh, that's good, about half, okay. How many of you don't remember having a really good conversation or an understanding about climate change coming out of middle school and high school? So that's not so good. Okay, so we got some work to do. In addition to the professional development workshops that we're providing, a second part of the climate literacy project with the Climate Center is something we call the Climate Literacy Fellows. And so through this project, we're hiring Gonzaga undergraduates to develop lesson plans with hands-on materials. What you see on the table in front of you are some of the materials that those fellows use to create engaging lesson plans for elementary school students, grades 2 to 5. So they took these materials and then used their own creativity as undergraduate Gonzaga students to think about how to engage our students. And so if you're a climate literacy fellow this year, would you mind standing up and be acknowledged? They are going into schools in Spokane Public Schools, grades 2 to 5, and engaging with young people. College students, teaching elementary school students is really powerful. It's a really great opportunity. If you'd like to learn a little bit more about that program. A couple of them will try and stay afterwards, and you could feel free to ask them questions about that program if you would like. Also, if you're an undergraduate and you're going to be here next year, and this interests you, we are hoping to hire more students next year. So look for, you could ask them questions about what it's like to be a fellow. You could look at Morning Mail, don't delete it, like you should do, and look for Morning Mail indicating when the applications are open for that job. And now I'd like to just set up, as we wait for Governor Inslee to arrive, just a little bit of the work that's been taking place in the state over the last few years that makes this such an important and interesting time and event. As you know, the climate crisis continues to get worse. Last summer was particularly bad here in Spokane. 20 of our local citizens in Spokane alone died during the heat dome. Probably at least 100 statewide. Many hundreds of thousands of acres of our forest burned again last summer, making the air unhealthy to breathe. And for those people who can't get inside or don't have good filtration, that becomes a really significant concern. Over the last few years, Washington has been leading the way in taking action, not just nationally, but internationally. In 2018, Washington created an OSPI, the Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction program called Climb Time. Climb Time is a state-funded program that actually helps to provide resources for climate science education in K-12 schools across the state. In fact, the Climate Literacy Fellows program is partly funded through a grant through the Climb Time program that was created in 2018, making Washington a real leader in helping to advance climate literacy and climate education for all students. The following year, in 2019, Washington passed the Clean Energy Transformation Act, or CETA. This is one of the most ambitious climate laws in the country. It eliminates all coal electricity from Washington State's grid by 2025. So by just 3 more years, there'll be no coal electricity in our grid. By 2030, it will be 80% clean electricity and net neutral. So that other 20% will be offset through other activities. And then by 2045, electricity will be 100% clean in Washington State. So we're on a path, legislated path, to clean electricity in Washington State, which is really, really remarkable. Just in 2020 then, so that was 2019, in 2020, Washington State passed the Climate Commitment Act, also referred to as Cap and Invest or Cap and Trade. So the idea here is to cap statewide emissions and then use the revenue generated from that to fund important renewable energy programs in our state. And then finally, last year, the state passed the HEAL Act, which is the first statewide law created to coordinate state agency approaches to environmental justice, which is something I hope that we're able to talk about a little bit today. So you can see Washington State's doing really great work. Is it enough? No. Are we doing it fast enough? Probably not. But now that we're electrifying the grid, the 2 next things we need to do is to transfer our heating systems and our transportation systems to that electrical grid. And this becomes really challenging. Once you have clean electricity, then you need to run your heating for your homes and businesses off of that grid, and you need to move transportation to that. This legislative session, one of the things that the legislature and Governor Inslee in particular are focusing on, and one of the things he's, I think, going to be doing after he leaves us here, is talk about the expansion of electric buses in Spokane. So the Central City Line is an east-west corridor that actually runs right on campus. The bus stops, you might have noticed, are set up there along Cincinnati by the Hemmingson Center. And so soon, and the pandemic has slowed it down a little bit, you'll have electric school buses that you can take downtown. You have a ZAG ID card, which includes a free bus pass on it. You'll be able to go downtown on an electric bus, and it'll be rapid. It'll be supposed to be every 7 to 10 minutes, another bus would come. So you don't have to plan your whole afternoon around hitting the bus. And then, with additional funding from the Climate Commitment Act, the Cap and Invest Act, they're also going to have money to do a north-south electric bus route that would also be rapid. And so if that passes in the legislature, that would be additional $50 million this year to expand that. So you'd have a north-south electric bus and an east-west one, which is really significant, right, as we move transportation to the grid. So lots being done. I think the governor is almost here, and I pretty much said everything I can think of to say that would be useful to buy time. So let's just wait just another minute, and then the governor will be with us, and we can start asking him some questions. Thanks so much for being here. Feel free to chat. Everybody join me in giving a warm ZAG welcome to the 23rd Governor of Washington State, Mr. Jay Inslee.
Well, thank you. Listen, I know that a lot of people think the number one thing in Washington State is the Gonzaga Bulldogs men's basketball team. But I think the number one thing is that we've got some of the greatest climate change, clean energy advocates in the United States right here on the campus of Gonzaga. And I want to thank you for being here. You are the best educated, most responsible, most caring generation in the history of the state of Washington. At a time where Washington State faces challenges that are unprecedented that we've never faced before. Our state forests are burning down, our rivers are flooding, our salmon are on the verge of extinction. Ocean acidification is changing the pH to make it barely tolerable for even oysters to grow in the waterways. This state has never faced a challenge to its very natural existence as it does right now because of carbon pollution and methane and climate change. Everybody in this room knows that. I don't have to spend a lot of time talking about that. What we need are young leaders to lead this state to a clean energy economy that can give us jobs here in Spokane County and across the state of Washington, good family wage jobs to create new businesses so that we can invent our way out of this pickle. And fortunately, that has happened across the state of Washington. We do have a generation of leaders, some of whom are in the room today, to lead that effort. They're leading at Group 14 in Maltby, where we're making one of the best silicon anode batteries in the world. It could maybe increase battery storage capacity by 50% for our cars. And a company in Soho that's making a fuel cell that can someday power a locomotive with zero emissions. In Bellingham, where the largest manufacturers of solar panels are in the Western Hemisphere, and they're doubling their production. In Lynn, where we have a concentrated solar apparatus generating pure electricity. We are changing the world in Washington State. And we've got the best generation in state history, which is yours, to be able to lead that effort. So I am very excited that you've invited me to have a chance to talk to you about that transition. This is going to be the largest industrial transition in world history because we have to transition off of a fossil fuel-based economy to one based on clean fuels. And we know we can do it because we're doing it right here in the state of Washington. And the time is up. We've got to start this right now. We're working in the legislature this year. We have some of the best clean energy policies in the United States, but they're still not good enough because we have to have more efficient buildings. So we have a bill that's now pending the legislature to give us more efficient buildings. We have to give people access to more electric cars so more people can afford electric cars. We have to move forward to use the climate change money for clean energy transportation. All of those things are now pending in the legislature. And one of the things I'd love to know your thoughts about is whether you want to be engaged in that dialogue with legislators to ask them to move forward. Now here's the reason that I think time is up. I had a town hall with Al Gore and EPA Administrator Jim McCarthy the night before last. And one thing Al Gore says that really strikes me is how fragile our atmosphere is. And he noted that you can drive from, if you had the atmosphere in a horizontal plane, you can walk from one end of the atmosphere to the other in one day very easily. You can drive in 15 minutes. That's how thin this atmosphere is. And when I talked to a Richland astronaut the other day, I was talking to her, she was at the space needle. Boy, that's a drop in names, isn't it? I was talking to an astronaut in the space needle, or in the space station the other day. But she says the number one thing she noticed, I asked her, what's the most impressive thing that you've experienced while you're in the space station? And she said, it's how thin the atmosphere is. And she said, you can see this kind of orange glow at the edge of the atmosphere. And she said it's like tissue paper. And she was telling me that she understood the challenges of climate change that were made even more acute when she could actually see how precious and unique and thin this atmosphere is. So we're out of time. This is the last few seconds on the clock. And I'm glad we got people at Gonzaga who care about this issue, who can help lead this great state. And so I'm looking forward to this discussion. And I hope you'll ask me some easy questions. Because I haven't been in college for a long time.
These are Gonzaga students, so there's no promising. You can either sit or stand. Feel free to do whatever.
I'm okay. I've been sitting down for a while.
First question from, we've kind of prearranged it, so students somewhat know they might be called on. Kelly Patterson, would you like to start us off? Just put up your hand and, there you go. Thanks, Kelly.
Hi, Governor Inslee. I'm Kelly Patterson. I'm a junior environmental studies major from Carnation, Washington. Before we go any further, I was asked to say hello from my grandma, Lorraine Hine.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I love Lorraine Hine.
Yeah, she is a big fan of yours, state legislator back in the day.
I learned everything I ever knew from Lorraine Hine. So I said so.
I'll let her know, yeah. Government work must run in our family because I'm currently employed at the EPA in the Air and Radiation Division.
Oh, great.
So I have some first-hand experience with federal climate action, but I'm interested in the state level action as well. So with that in mind, I'm wondering what you believe to be the greatest threat Washington faces as a result of climate change, and what steps are you and the Washington state government taking to mitigate this threat?
Yeah, that's a very important question. I'm going to dig deep to answer it. And this answer may surprise you because you were expecting me to say, forest fires or ocean acidification or extinction. Those would be the obvious things to go to. I want to go to something deeper. The biggest threat in the state of Washington, I believe, in regard to climate change is fear. Because I think the reason this has been difficult for us to make this transition more quickly is people's fear that we can't do this, that it's just too hard, and that we're not smart enough to invent and build a new clean energy future. And I think we're up against the forces of fear, so people are unwilling to take the actions they need to help develop this clean energy resource. And this is change, and change is hard. And so I think our central challenge in the climate change movement is to help people overcome that fear and understand how we are fully capable of building this clean energy economy. Now I believe that because I believe this for some time. I co-authored a book about this in 2007. And in 2007, I wrote a book about saying we're going to have electric cars. And in 2007, when I said that, people said, well, that's nutty. These things are just like golf carts, right? Nobody's really going to have electric cars. Look at the Super Bowl ads this year. The automobile companies keep falling all over themselves and say, well, I got the most electric cars, right? We're making the Ford F-150. It's going to become the classic pickup. This transition has happened so rapidly, it ought to give us confidence that we can in fact move this needle forward. And it's happened all over the state of Washington. One of the things about the clean energy revolution, it's not just like a Seattle deal or not just a Spokane deal. It's all over the state of Washington. It's in Moses Lake where there's potentially a company coming in. We're trying to recruit big time. It's in South Seattle. It's in Spokane where I'm going to visit an electric bus here in about a half hour. And the integrated grid system that is world leading in downtown Spokane, this is happening in Spokane. So I think our central the thing we got to do is build confidence in our ability to make this change. And I think there's every reason to be able to do that. Please say hello to Ray.
Thanks for starting us off, Kelly. That's an excellent start. Bridgette Wilson, are you here?
So, hi, Governor Inslee. My name is Bridgette Wilson, and I'm a sophomore history major from Sammamish, Washington. So, growing up in Washington State, I learned about climate change in school since elementary school. However, after I first learned about it and how many world leaders weren't actually taking the threat seriously, I had nightmares and enough anxiety that it was something I had to talk to a therapist about. However, being a resident of Washington State, a leader in climate action, helped to soothe my anxiety, and now I try to turn my fear into action. My question for you, Governor Inslee, is what gives you hope that we can meet the challenge of climate change, especially in a world that has taken so little action this far?
Simply put, you do. You're what give me hope. And I'm very serious about this because I know that you and your generation is committed to this. Frankly, more so than my generation. And I know that your action is going to be basically telling the boomers to get off their lawn. Hey, boomer, wake up. The boomers should not be able to leave you a desiccated planet. And I believe your generation is going to become even more active to make sure that we do that. Now, you did point out something in your question about how to deal with anxiety and the despair, which is real, and I believe me, you're not alone. I talk to a lot of people of your age who have that same feeling. But you put your finger on the best antidote to that despair, and that is action, right? The way to generate hope is to take action. Like, in any moment you feel that inability, take action, whatever it is. Call your legislator, tell them what you think about these bills. Get involved with some company. I mean, action is what is the fuel to generate hope. And hope without action is just kind of like a dream. And so whatever action it is, I encourage you to take it. And by the way, despair is deadly in this situation. And this is another thing Gore said the other night. Despair is just as bad as denial. So if you let the despair take over, you're kind of as dangerous as a climate denier, right? Because then that keeps you from taking action. So I know you're going to take action, and I wish you well. And by the way, I'm glad you have learned about this in schools. It shows what we're doing is working. So.
Thank you so much, Bridgette. Madden, are you here?
Yes. Hi, Governor Inslee. I'm Madden Tavernisi, and I'm a freshman environmental science major here at Gonzaga. So coming from my hometown of San Jose, California, which I acknowledge is not Washington, I've seen climate change's effects on citizens' everyday lives firsthand. I grew up with fire or flooded highways as valid and normal excuses to miss school or be late to dentist appointments. When I came to Gonzaga, I felt very driven to study climate change and its ecological, social, and economic implications in order to imagine and hopefully bring about a world where people's lives are placed above fossil fuel profits. And so San Jose is also one of the cities in the USA with the most restricted zoning laws for single-family homes exclusively, some of the most urban sprawl, some of the least efficient highway systems, and some of the greatest auto emissions. And we also have an incredibly high population of unhoused citizens. As climate disasters and dangerous extreme temperatures continue to grow in both frequency and in severity, what's your plan to provide emergency aid and, more importantly, permanent high-density housing solutions to Washington's unhoused people and climate, especially wildfire refugees?
Got it. Well, that's a big question here. By the way, were you named after the football coach?
No, some of my family is Welsh.
Okay, no, that's great. That's my heritage as well. So, top of 1 and 2. Listen, big question. There is so much we need to do in our housing crisis. It is a crisis. That's why I've committed in my budget $800 million to deal with it. First off, to put real dollars into the mix, and importantly, focusing on rapid solutions for people who are housed. We can't wait 5 or 6 years to deal with this problem. We've got to act very quickly in months, not years, to get housing built for the homeless, the folks who are homeless. And in doing that, we've got to be smart. That means we've got to provide people mental health care that they need if they're going to be successful in housing. The chemical challenges that people have, we have to be able to give them support systems to help to make sure that they can really succeed. So we got to have soup to nuts. It's got to be rapid, and it's got to be supported, and it's got to be real money. That's $800 million I've committed the most of, in Washington State history in this regard. So that's a couple things. But you mentioned something that's a real challenge, and that is we have to have a place to build housing. We simply don't have enough housing in the state of Washington. We've had like, 1 million people move in, and we've only, we're 220,000 short of housing units. We have to build more housing throughout the market, not just low-income housing, but middle-income housing as well. Because if middle-income people don't have a place to live, they'll outbid low-income people for the rents. So low-income people won't have a place to live. So we need housing all through the state. And unfortunately, we have antiquated zoning laws, as you pointed out, that prohibit actually building housing for middle-income people, which includes duplexes and fourplexes and apartments and the like, because of our antiquated zoning laws. So I've made an effort to require cities to have more dense zoning, to allow more dense housing. And I have to tell you, I've not been successful this legislative session. I'm very disappointed in this. We're going to have to take another crack at it so we can actually build more housing. And the enemy of this, frankly, is you all know it, it's the NIMBY syndrome, right? Not in my backyard. So I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with folks saying, boy, we got to solve this homelessness problem, but don't build any housing in my neighborhood. We can't solve this problem if NIMBYism wins the day. And frankly, it has so far in our state legislature, because the bills I've introduced have not succeeded. So we'll be back at it in the next session. I hope you share your viewpoints with your legislators.
Governor, in addition to the housing issue, I think another part of Madden's question, correct me if I'm wrong, was about emergency aid relative to climate-caused disasters, for example. I'm not sure if you had something specific in mind, but is that part of your question?
Yes. Fairly significant to all of this have been issues in Spokane proper with warming centers and cooling centers in their respective seasons being overwhelmed by unhoused populations.
So funding the clean air shelters, cooling shelters.
Yeah, that's part of the $800 million is available for those kind of things. So you bet that is necessary. And it's so bad. Listen, the need for air filtration is very profound. In the Methow Valley last summer was the worst air in the entire planet for a few days last summer because of forest fires. And I was meeting with them about trying to get them filtration systems so that when particularly kids and older folks can get filtration systems in their houses so they can breathe. So this is an acute need. I hope that money will go in that direction.
Thank you, Matt. One of the things that the Gonzaga Climate Center is pursuing is a grant for an urban heat island citizen science project, where if we get the sensors this summer, you might see a notice saying, please help us to go around town mapping the areas in Spokane that have extra urban heat island effects, so that we can locate the services in the places that need the most, and we'll know where to plant trees, which frequently are not in the neighborhoods that are most affluent, as you know.
Right. Yeah, and if I can comment on this general issue, I always sometimes don't hesitate, but I think it's important to say we cannot solve this problem by just adapting to it. We just can't. The fires will overwhelm us. We do need more forest management in our forests, but they're still going to burn like crazy. The salmon are going to go extinct no matter what we do if these temperatures continue to increase. And the reason I say that is I hear all too often that we'll just adapt to this and we'll be fine. No, there is no adaptation to this problem that will not leave you to a desiccated, debilitated, disabled state of Washington. And so yes, we have to do some of these things. Cooling centers, filtration centers, forest management, more kelp beds to deal with ocean acidification. But it is impossible to solve this problem after the fire has burned your house down. So we have to do both, and too many people use that as an excuse for inaction.
I'd like to go next. I think it's a good transition point. Before you arrived, we were talking about a program that we run called the Climate Literacy Project. And part of that is a Climb Time OSPI funded project. And we hire Gonzaga undergraduates to go out into classrooms, K-5 classrooms, to deliver climate science lessons. And they use some of the materials over on the table there. I'd like to go to one of our fellows next, Jordan Cruz, to ask the next question.
Hello, Governor Inslee. My name is Jordan Cruz. I'm a senior environmental studies and Spanish student, originally from Pueblo, Colorado, but have called Washington home now for about 3 years. And as a student of environmental studies and Spanish, and also a member of the Latinx community, I'm particularly invested in the areas of where social justice and climate change intersect, because they're one and the same, frankly. And far too often in the climate change movement or the environmental movement in general, non-white voices have been ignored. So my general question is, in what ways can we use policy in order to bring those voices into the conversation and make sure that they're protected in the further effects of climate change before it's too late?
Got it. Well, you're answering your question because you're speaking up, right? You're moving the needle by speaking up on this, Jordan. So I appreciate your leadership on this. And we need this. We need this leadership in this mission statement from the BIPOC community. Now, fortunately, we're getting that, and that is why we've been really have relative success on the issue of environmental justice. So I'm going to just share some of that with you. So we now have the best cap and invest system in the United States. So we have a law that caps the amount of carbon dioxide, as you know, and generates money from that for corporations that have to buy permits to pollute, use that money to develop clean energy sources. And in those projects, we have the best environmental justice in the state, or the United States, because it requires 40% of those projects to be in overburdened communities. The communities frequently who are BIPOC communities, who've been breathing the pollution, who've been living next to the freeways and low-income housing, who've been living next to the toxic waste dumps and the polluting smokestacks. And we have a guarantee that 40% of that will be helping those overburdened communities. We also have a provision that in the jobs that are generated from the clean energy transition, that they're family wage jobs, that they're not just minimum wage jobs. So we have extra points to get these grants if you have prevailing wage rates and if you give people organizational rights. So I can tell you with confidence we have the most environmentally dedicated laws in the United States on this subject, but that doesn't mean we're done, right? So there is more work we need to be done. So take electric cars. I'm asking the legislature this year to help people afford to make the transition to electric vehicles. And so I've proposed a $7,500 rebate program and an additional $5,000 for low-income folks, so that it's not just lawyers and doctors who are buying electric cars. So we're building that into our rebate program as well. And one of the things, and I want to take just a minute to talk about a really important bill right now. One of the real problems of low-income folks are energy bills, right? They're living in an uninsulated place, they got a decrepit oil heater, and they're paying through the nose for utilities. We want to take action to reduce energy costs of people, to reduce the usage of fossil fuels, and these overburdened communities understand how important that is. So we're proposing a law that will basically say in 2033, we're going to up our building codes to make sure that we have access to more efficient buildings, which will lead to lessen the use of fossil fuels, fracked gas, so that after 2033, we reduce our dependence on fracked gas and we provide people with more efficient housing. This is House Bill 1770. It has now passed the House of Representatives. It is pending in the state Senate. This is an extremely important bill because we've made commitments. So the legislature's made a commitment to the people of the state of Washington to reduce carbon pollution below a certain level. We have to increase the efficiency and decrease the use of fracked gas if we're going to reach those limits. So this bill is extremely important as a mechanism to fulfill that. It's House Bill 1770. And frankly, we need a little help to get that through the state Senate. Now, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but you have a right to talk to your legislators about this bill or any other bill. And you have the right to tell them you think this is a dumb bill, and you have the right to tell them you think it's a brilliant bill. You have to make your own decision about that, which it is. But I just pointed out as to why I'm happy to be here with you, because you are the folks that can move the needle on this. And it is interesting to me too. I mean, I talk to some people like, why call my legislator? I can tell you it makes a big difference. If this group of people talk to your legislators about that bill, you'd be amazed what you can accomplish, which is, hey, don't come home without it. And so, anyway, thank Jordan for your question and your leadership.
Governor, am I right that that bill would help to improve building codes for new construction?
Correct. It would affect only new construction going forward after 2033.
Any of you live in the Logan neighborhood right now? So do you have a house that's rather old and the infrastructure is right? So the problem is that the landlords have no incentive to improve the infrastructure because they don't pay the utility bills, right, as you well know. So do you have any ideas? This is a tough one. I cannot think of a good way of solving this problem of creating incentives for landlords who don't pay the utility bills. Improving the building codes is great, and it will make new housing stock more efficient, and we have to do that. But Spokane is full of housing stock which is aging, and there doesn't seem to be the right carrot or stick that exists right now. Do you have ideas for that?
Well, yes. The climate bills we have passed are an incentive for that because it creates a limitation of pollution, and that should over time drive more investment. It's not an immediate solution to this problem. The housing funds that we've talked about, the $800 million, is going to help create more housing that should be more efficient and not have high energy costs. So those are the kind of things we are doing. I'm not sure it's going to help this class this month, but we're heading in the right direction on this.
Let's take one more question. And I think, Anna, Sophia, are you here?
Hi, I'm Anna Sophia. I'm a senior here. I'm a psych student, so not in STEM a lot, but I do minors in women's and gender studies and religious studies, so we do talk about social justice a lot in my classes. I'm also from Seattle, Washington. I went to high school on Capitol Hill, so it's a very familiar area to me. And my question is a bit odd. I've been offered the opportunity to meet with Pope Francis next Thursday to discuss the topic of our global climate crisis and migration. In preparation for this conversation, I'm trying to understand what the church as a massive institution, and I mean it means a lot to Gonzaga University as well, being a Jesuit university, but I'm trying to understand, is there something that you as a policymaker would like me to communicate to the Pope about how the Vatican and Catholics worldwide can best aid the work that you as a political leader and others are already doing to solve this crisis? Maybe what would a conversation or collaboration between the two influences look like?
Well, listen, I name drop Al Gore and you come up with the Pope. And I'm in a higher class neighborhood that I'm used for doing it. What an
Gonzaga, I mean.
Yeah, what an extraordinary opportunity. I just think that's incredible that you'll have a chance to talk to a world leader in that regard. So let me give serious thought to that. Now, wouldn't it be cool if the Pope called the legislators from Spokane and said, please pass House Bill 1770? That would be pretty cool. I'll get them their phone number if you get the Pope to call them. Listen, the Pope's been fantastic on this issue. He has been one of the most inspiring leaders on this issue to ask humans to care for the Creator's creation. And it has been very important in the international conversation. So the first thing, what I would say is thank you for lifting up so many people's hearts on this subject. And I mean that. You should thank you. But I guess I would say I would like to empower him to feel free not to speak to just those of the Catholic faith. He's a world leader, and he should feel free to talk to the whole community of all faiths who all share this Creator's blessing, which is so unique. And I'd love to feel him empowered to understand how how important and useful his voice is on this. I guess that would be my central message. And then give them legislators' phone number and ask them to call. House Bill 7070. Yeah, listen, I'd love to talk to you after this conversation, see how it went. That's really, really exciting. You bet.
Governor Inslee, thank you so much for being here. We got you a little something.
Oh, all right. Before I go, Anna, could you come up here just for a minute, please? So as governor of the state of Washington, I have a lot of privileges, and one of which is if I meet a Washingtonian that really inspires me, who really gives me hope for the future of the state of Washington, I can name them Washingtonian of the day. So when I do that, I take off this Washington State apple pin, best apples in the world, and pin it on. And today's Washingtonian of the day, Anna. Congratulations. This is going to give her some credibility when she talks to the Pope. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being with us here today. If you asked a question of the governor, if you could hang out, and in case the media would like to chat with you or talk to our fellows up front, thank you again, Governor. We appreciate you coming to Gonzaga.
Thank you. We will see you.